for other house on the other side of the premises of the Milimani Law Courts, where the parties that were attending or rather were involved in the for other house registry, the activity ended just about an hour and a half ago, where when the registrar of the Supreme Court, that is LM Letizia Washira, I was having a session with the parties involved in this whole opening of the, rather in the review of the ballot boxes, as well as the servers, an issue that came up. And at the time, what the conclusion was is that the Supreme Court registrar will prepare her report. This had been preceded by what Justice Lenaola had said, that the parties will have an opportunity, because their teams told them that the process was ongoing smoothly. However, at the Forodha House, when the issue of the servers came up, the parties of the petitioners complained that the servers had not been opened for them, and they were asking that if the report is produced, then what kind of report would that be? And that's when the Supreme Court registrar told them that that report will be produced, and they will have an opportunity to prosecute that before court later on today. That report will be coming in at 2 p.m. Remember, the court has proceeded on a short recess to return to resume at 2 p.m. So those are some of the issues that transpired for other house, where that recount, or rather the reopening of the ballot boxes was happening, as well as the issue of the servers. The reports will be prepared, one from Anniversary Towers as well as from here, and they will be presented before court, and we shall be waiting to hear what the judges will have to say regarding the various reports that will be submitted to them when they resume at 2 p.m. From that short break. But here at the Supreme Court, I'm also with my colleague Ken Mijungu, also with an overview of what transpired earlier on from morning up until afternoon. Ken, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, George Moringa, and thank you, Fatia. Of course, it's been an eventful day today. It's a Thursday, and today is the respondents' case. They're putting up their case. As much as they're responding to this petition, today they're putting also a spirited fight against all the allegations that were made by the petitioners yesterday. Now, 3.5 hours to the book. I mean, the judges taking no compromise on time today. Yesterday, they extended with 6 minutes, but today, Fatia, they decided it's on time to the dot. So as soon as the last submissions were made and the clock ticked, 3 hours, 30 minutes, the submissions for the respondents were over. But this is just about Wafula Chebukati and the IEBC, plus the fact that there are a few more submissions this afternoon. The respondents were a total of 11. They're definitely going to have a long ride this afternoon also. But just some highlights from this morning when the case began, because that's where it began by the petitioners in this case, that's A005, bringing out their case. And one of the pending issues yesterday, Fatia, was about the opening of the servers. If I may say, there was a claim that there were 8 servers, only server number 5 was open, but it was partially opened. Apart from being partially open, it was under supervision. Now, there was an impression that there need to be a forensic audit, and that was rebutted because the respondents say they cannot give a complete access. So that's why it began in the morning, and Justice Lenaola came out clear and stated that according to them, and the officials who are leading that process, the process was almost over, or was about over 4 a.m. in this morning, and definitely they will get a report in that, and using that report, the court will be able to come to a conclusion. Sort of, he brushed it off as something that was unnecessary, and at one point he urged the court to keep the issues within the circle of the court. So that's where it began. Professor Githu Muigai coming out clean to impeach most, if not everything, that was said by the petitioners yesterday. And among them, the role of the IBC commissioners, and what happened and what did not happen. And perhaps the most important thing in his submission this morning was the bigger picture, giving meaning to the vote, giving meaning to the count, and giving meaning to 3 articles of the Constitution, 81, 86, and 138, specifically 138 3C of the Constitution. That's where it was. And also, Article 81 of the Constitution, the count, the vote that must count. Now, that was very, very ably put across by the former AG, Professor Githu Muigai, who took a few minutes off the clock just to make sure that indeed he made his case. But that was not the most important. He was laying ground for what was supposed to happen, because a few minutes later, Kamau Karori aptly came up and also tried to impeach everything that was given by the petitioners yesterday, starting from the IBC chair, the role of the IBC chair, what the constitution contemplates, and if they can work in isolation. Now, he also attempted to impeach what the four, now we call them Serena 4, commissioners said yesterday in their deponent in their affidavit, and that went for almost an hour. Now, the import and the importance of what Kamau Karuri was talking about precisely was the fact that the IEBC worked as one. The commission works as one, and ultimately the role of the role. Before even we talk about the role that Article 138(4) of the Constitution was actually achieved in this election. Then he went on to talk about 138(10)(a), where the announcement was made, and that being an exclusive role of the commission and that of the chairman is to announce. Now, this goes to the core of the presentation yesterday of one Paul Nyamodi. Now, it's interesting because Paul Nyamodi, if you remember, petitioned Raila Odinga in 2013. Paul Nyamodi was on the other side as the IBC. Now, take away that. Look at 2017, Paul Nyamodi was also with the IBC. Now, yesterday's submission taught to the core of the role of the commission, and aptly put by Paul Nyamodi, he understands the IBC like the back of his hand, and he tried to tell the court that the chairman acted in isolation. In fact, he went back to the time the chairman gazetted his role as the national returning officer, also mentioning that position does not exist. Now, juxtapose that with what we were told today by Kamau Karuri. He brought it back and even tore into that submission and said the court itself recognizes the role of a national returning officer, looked at the 2017 petition and brought out a paragraph where the court recognized that, looked at two precedences and looked at the time the court affirmed that the role of the national returning officer exists. So basically, that was the role of Kamau Karuri this morning. And the most important part again for these submissions today was to try and impeach the figures by Okia Omtata. Now, this was done by an advocate, if I'm not wrong, Samat, if I'm not wrong, and he worked on the figures. Now, straight up, he picked it from where the petitioners left. But first, I'd like to go to the use of technology in the transmission and even in the verification, and not only that, even in the identification of the voters. Now, he laid a very good foundation, a very good platform to the workings of the IEBC, stating how from 2007, when we decided to go technology in terms of identification, we consolidated all these systems from identifying and registering the voter to identifying the voter to the transmission of the election results. It was meant to be one, and he laid that foundation proper. Now, from that, he went ahead to try and work on the figures of Okia Mtata. Now, the allegation here is no one achieved the 50% plus one vote in this tally, and he said that these figures cannot be correct. Now, his premise is this, that they computed those figures using the wrong computation or using the wrong results. Now, how did he do this? He went back and told us how the reporting schemes were being reported by the IEBC, and based on that, he holds that the figures that were used by Okia Mtata were completely incorrect. Thereby, the results there being cannot be relied upon. So his work in this petition was basically to lay the ground and show that the figures as computed by the petitioners, especially Okia Mtata, assisted there by Professor Tom Ojenda yesterday, were not correct. Remember, they have said the core of this petition is the figures, the Form 34A. So once again, the advocate, and if I get his name wrong, you'll correct me, Samad, if I'm not wrong, went back and tried to bring the finality of these results according to the Maina Kiai case. The finality is at the polling station. Now, why is this important? Because if the petitioners are unable to impeach the figures as of the results in Form 34A, then they don't have anything to stand on. So what this advocate tried to do today here is to try to show that the results as reported at the polling stations as transmitted simultaneously to the constituency tallying center and to the national tallying center are the same. Now, in the absence of that, then there's a lot of question. And at one point, he even said one of the forms that was relied upon, that was used as an attachment in one affidavit, was fraudulently obtained, or it was a forgery, or it was a fake. Now, his premise again was this, Fatia, because this was interesting, that constituency that I can't remember, Bar or Board, I can't remember the name, in Tiati, had no polling agent. So who gave this result form to the petitioners? How did they obtain it? And again, he said that is an impossibility. Apart from that, let's talk now a little bit about technology, because he used the technology so much to credit the IBC, his client, for what they did in this election, that the verification process, for example, the forms that were used to declare or to run this election has 8 security features. Now, these 8 security features, it's impossible to introduce another form. Now, he said from the polling stations, when you're about to transmit these results, Fatia, the first thing that happens is the system will query, will ask you a question. I will ask you what you want to do. Do you want to transmit Form 34A? Have you confirmed the agent has signed it? Have you done all those preliminary? Then finally, it will allow you to click send. And once you send, this advocate holds that you cannot recall the form. It can hang in the air, it can be anywhere, but it will always go to the intended destination. So it says once it goes to that destination, you cannot recall it. And across the air here, you cannot again find that form and retrieve it, change it, and then send it. And in fact, at the end of his submission, he said that if there exists such a technology that can do that can change these forms, then it needs to be patented, because that technology is unheard of. But again, you have to look at the totality of these submissions. Yesterday, when we left, we knew very well that there's a case that has been put by the petitioners. Now, today, that case has been poked holes into. They've tried to impeach it. They've tried to read the inconsistencies. They've done all that for the benefit of the IEBC, the IEBC chairperson, and the president-elect, and of course, the deputy president-elect. Now, their case is coming up in the afternoon. That's the deputy president, the president-elect, and deputy president-elect. But you cannot look at this case again in isolation. A win for IEBC is a win for the president-elect, because essentially the court, if they win, the court clears them of any wrongdoing. So it goes that the president-elect was elected validly. So you have to look at it in totality. So this afternoon, as I come back to you, the presentations this afternoon, we're supposed to hear from the rest of the 9 respondents what their advocates have to say. And I think the devil must be in the details today, because again, yesterday that case was laid bare, but today it's wide open, because the respondents are coming hard on the applicants or on the petitioners and trying not only to make their case, to make them look not only like they did a good job, but to show that they did a good job, but also to impeach everything. And as I leave and hand over to Maringa, there's something interesting in this, because yesterday we had a lot of advocates asking for criminal sanctions against anyone who would be found liable, especially Wafula Chebukati and any other commissioner. There's a fly here, and any other commissioner. But today, these respondents are also asking for criminal sanctions against any electoral official who purported to file even the logs alone that were false, that were fake. They want the court to find them criminally liable, and also not only the officials, but even the petitioners who they say are bringing frivolous cases before the court. If they find them again liable, then they are calling for criminal sanctions. And it's an interesting day here, and I know the cows are coming home today at around 6-7 p.m. And if they do earlier, the better for the court. They have a lot of time for rejoinders tomorrow, and probably the case will end earlier in the afternoon. But for me, unless you have a supplementary question, I'll return it to my colleague, George Maringa. George?
Indeed, Ken Mijungu, of course, the detailed update, or rather analysis of what happened in the court from the morning session just about before they proceeded on that short recess. And they will return again at 2 p.m. And you can trust us right here on KT News to bring you up to date, even with the specific issue I have been following up on, that is at Forodha House. Remember, there is that reopening, or rather reopening of the ballot boxes, as well as the issue that surrounds the server. We shall be waiting to see what reports that the Supreme Court registrar, that is, who will be able to present her report later on to the court, and what the court will have to say about it, and whether parties will be able to submit any rejoinders to it. Because as you remember, I mentioned earlier on, the parties, remember the first and second petitioners, were complaining that they were introduced to another server that was not the original server by the IBC, and they were protesting the production of that report that is going to be handed over to the Supreme Court judges, to the bench later on. But those are some of the things that we'll be conversing, and also to ensure that we bring you up to date from here at the Supreme Court buildings, from the Milimani section where the Supreme Court is holding its sittings. Back to you, Fatia, in studio.
Thank you, George Maringa and Ken Mijungu, for that. Just a correction on the lawyer Ken Mijungu was talking about is actually called Mahat Somane, and he was, of course, focusing on demystifying the numbers, and of course also looking at the unexplainable discrepancies that were also put by the petitioners. We're taking a short break here on KTN News Desk. We'll be back with more. Stay with us.